Picture this for a moment, a country of just 5.5 million people, sitting in the icy north of Europe, has just drawn a line that is sending shockwaves straight to the Kremlin, not with tanks, not with missiles, with a single piece of legislation. And with that move, Finland may have just created one of the most serious strategic dilemmas Vladimir Putin has faced in his entire presidency. What makes this moment extraordinary is that the situation unfolding today was not created by NATO alone. It is the result of a chain reaction that Putin himself triggered. This is not speculation. This is not a distant scenario. This is happening right now in real time, and the consequences could reshape Northern Europe's security landscape for decades. Stay with us, because in the next few minutes, we will walk you through every layer of this geopolitical earthquake, from Russia's military buildup along Finland's border to the new nuclear legislation that could transform NATO's deterrence posture, to what a Kremlin spokesman revealed that hints at genuine anxiety inside Moscow. We'll also examine the massive border fence Finland is building right now, the NATO command structures already operating inside Finnish territory, and what all of this means for Russia's most sensitive and irreplaceable military asset on the planet. This is the full strategic picture, and it's remarkable. Before we dive deeper, if you value a serious geopolitical analysis and real strategic insight beyond the headlines, make sure you subscribe to BCC News, turn on notifications, and stay ahead of the biggest global developments shaping our world. Now let's start at the beginning, because to understand what Finland is doing today, you first have to understand what Vladimir Putin believed would happen. For more than 2 decades, Putin operated on a very specific strategic assumption. He believed NATO's expansion could be controlled, managed, and ultimately stopped through a mix of military pressure, energy leverage, and geopolitical intimidation. And 2 countries were central to that calculation: Finland and Sweden. Both had maintained careful neutrality throughout the Cold War and long after it ended. As long as those 2 nations stayed outside NATO, Russia maintained something invaluable: a key strategic buffer zone, a geographic cushion separating NATO forces from Russia's most sensitive military infrastructure. Putin believed that buffer was permanent. He was wrong. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, something changed across Europe. Not just in Kiev, not just in Warsaw or the Baltic states, but in places like Helsinki and Stockholm, where neutrality had long been considered the safest path. Suddenly, the calculation looked different. Finland applied to join NATO, and in April 2023, it officially became the alliance's 31st member. But that was only the first step. What came next is what truly alarmed Moscow. Let's move to the map. There is a city called Petrozavodsk, capital of Russia's Republic of Karelia. For years, it had been little more than a quiet military relic from the Soviet era. But recently, something changed. Russia began quietly constructing new barracks, moving armored vehicles and military equipment into nearby forests, and preparing the deployment of a newly created formation known as the 44th Army Corps. The plan was ambitious: increase Russian troop presence near the Finnish border from about 3,000 soldiers to roughly 15,000. Further north in Kandalaksha, construction began on a completely new military installation designed to house an artillery and engineering brigade, and Russian fighter jets, Su-35s and Su-27s, began flying patrols from nearby air bases. The signal from Moscow was clear: a visible show of force meant to intimidate Finland. In Putin's mind, the logic was simple. A large Russian military presence on the border would discourage Finland from moving too far toward NATO integration. But Putin overlooked something important. Finland is not an inexperienced state. It is a country shaped by one of the most defining military experiences in European history, the Winter War of 1939. That winter, the Soviet Union invaded Finland. The Red Army had millions of soldiers. Finland had fewer than 4 million people in total. Yet for months, Finnish forces held the line. The Soviet army suffered devastating casualties before finally forcing Finland to concede territory. But Finland survived. It was never conquered, and it never forgot the cost. That experience is deeply embedded in Finnish national identity. It explains why Finland maintained Western Europe's largest artillery reserve, long before joining NATO. It explains why the country has a massive mobilization system capable of placing 870,000 trained reservists into the field, and why Finland's defense planners are working toward an extraordinary goal: 1 million trained citizens and prepared for national defense. Let that number sink in. 1 million people ready to defend a nation of just 5.6 million. This is not simply an army. It is a society organized for survival. Most Finnish men serve in the military and remain in reserve units until their 60s. Many women now do the same. National defense is not just policy in Finland, it is culture. And now this nation, with this doctrine, this history, and this mobilization capacity, is fully integrated into NATO. It hosts NATO headquarters. Its defense spending is approaching 3% of GDP, and it is considering a legal change that could open the door to something that would have been unthinkable only a few years ago. On March 5th, 2026, Finland announced plans to amend its Nuclear Energy Act of 1987. For decades, that law banned nuclear weapons from Finnish territory in all circumstances, peacetime and wartime alike. But now that restriction may be lifted. Finland's defense minister explained why. The security environment, he said, has fundamentally changed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This amendment would allow Finland to fully participate in NATO's nuclear deterrence framework, and that is where the strategic implications become enormous. Because of geography, Finland shares 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia, the longest border between Russia and any NATO member, but the truly critical location lies just to the north, the Kola Peninsula. This is one of the most important military regions in the entire Russian Federation. It hosts Russia's northern fleet and the nuclear ballistic missile submarines that form the backbone of Moscow's nuclear deterrent. These submarines guarantee Russia's ability to launch a second strike in the event of nuclear war. Without them, Russia's strategic balance against NATO would look very different. Now consider the map again. Finland, once neutral, now sits directly within NATO's defense system, within operational distance of that strategic heartland. Finnish President Alexander Stubb made the reasoning clear. The legal change does not mean Finland plans to host nuclear weapons immediately. It means the infrastructure could be ready if a crisis demanded it. In strategic terms, that readiness itself becomes a deterrent. France's evolving nuclear policy adds another layer. President Emmanuel Macron has proposed a concept known as forward deterrence. In a crisis, French nuclear-capable aircraft could disperse across Allied territory while remaining under French command. If Finland's legal change passes, its territory could potentially become part of that deterrence network, and that possibility has clearly unsettled Moscow. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov responded quickly. He warned that Finland's decisions could increase tensions and create vulnerabilities for Helsinki. He even suggested Russia would take appropriate measures. But the deeper meaning of those words may reveal something else: concern, because Russia is already heavily stretched by the war in Ukraine, building military strength along a 340-kilometer NATO border, while continuing a grinding conflict hundreds of kilometers away is not a simple task. And this is the strategic trap that has emerged. Putin launched the war in Ukraine partly to push NATO away from Russia's borders. Instead, NATO is now closer than ever before. Finland is fully integrated into the alliance. Sweden has joined as well, and the Baltic Sea is rapidly transforming into what some analysts describe as a NATO-dominated security zone. All of this is unfolding while Russia's conventional military resources remain deeply committed to Ukraine. It is one of the most dramatic shifts in European security since the end of the Cold War, and we are watching it happen in real time. If you found this analysis valuable, share it with someone who wants to understand not just the headlines, but the strategy behind them. Leave your thoughts in the comments. We read them all. And make sure you subscribe to Keen Ha BCC News K. Turn on notifications and stay with us as we continue bringing you deep geopolitical insights into the events shaping our world. Thank you for watching.